Good morning. My name is Steve Fano. I'm the incident meteorologist on the Calf Canyon Hermits Peak Fire. And this is a weather outlook for basically the rest of the summer through fall of 2022. Next slide, please. Okay, so where have we been as far as rainfall goes? The black line here represents what's normal for this area as far as precipitation goes. And probably the things to note here are the peaks of the heaviest rainfall usually occurs in the July-August timeframe. That's the black line. Now, the bar graph there, the blue is 2021 rainfall that was actually measured in this area, and then the red is for 2022. And you can see that for 2021, the winter, late winter, or early winter of 2021 going into winter of 2022 was very dry. And that was kind of what prompted us to start having some pretty bad fire activity. Even as we got into March and April, you can see the rainfall is much lower than what's normal for this time of year. Then as we skip ahead into June, you see a big spike in the red line. And that is where we started the fire was going on, and that's when we started getting the rain and the flooding. And now that takes us to July of 2022, where rainfall is on the uptick. It's still below normal, but we still have half a month to go. So next slide, please. Okay, so even with all that rain that we had in June and early July, we are still considered in severe drought conditions. And the star there represents roughly where the fire perimeter or burn scar is. And you can see further east, it's even worse with exceptional drought. So the rain, although it did help things, it's certainly still dry in this area. Next slide, please. Okay, so I thought just before I go into the outlook, let's just talk real briefly about what some basic patterns that bring rain to this area are. And there's two basic monsoon patterns that will bring rainfall to this area. The one on the left here is probably the more favored one for heavy rain and precipitation, and that's where high pressure is off into the central and southern plains, and that brings up moisture from multiple sources: the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of California, and that's usually when we see our most numerous showers and thunderstorms. Now, the pattern on the right, that is pretty much more sporadic moisture into the area. That's scattered showers and thunderstorms, don't happen every day. The moisture kind of comes in and out. And so we kind of fluctuate in the summertime here between these two patterns when it's a monsoon season. Next slide, please. Okay, so what has the pattern been so far? Well, remember I told you that June was a very wet month. And there's that first pattern I was showing you where the high pressure is pushed well off to the east, and actually it's even in the southeastern United States. And this was early June, a weather map taken from early June. So you see with that high pressure there's circulation is clockwise around a high, and that brings moisture up from those multiple sources. So then as we moved into July, that high pressure shifted to the west, back closer to the Four Corners region, and that's the second pattern that I showed you. And remember, that is the more sporadic moisture coming into the area, with not every day having rain and thunderstorms, but occasionally we do. So next slide, please. Okay, so what's ahead and why? Well, basically, we have been in that pattern where the high pressure was sitting over the Four Corners, but for the next few weeks anyway, at least the 3 to 4 week precipitation outlook, which takes us into August, actually almost mid-August, that high pressure center is actually forecast to move back to the east and southeast. And what that does is that gets us back into that first pattern where we have more continuous moisture feeding into the area. And this is from the Climate Prediction Center. They're showing that much of New Mexico, it has above normal precipitation chances. Now, we're kind of in the equal chances right here in the northeastern edge, but I think most of where the burn scar is actually falls into that green. So what that means is multiple chances for additional rainfall basically through mid-August, and we may have significant rainfall. All right, next slide, please. All right, and then in the outlook through September, pretty much what happens, we don't really have any computer models that'll show us exactly what the pattern is going to look like, but I can tell you this, we shift from that pattern of the most favorable moisture probably to one that looks more like what we currently have, which is high pressure setting up back over the four corners. And what that'll do for us is it'll probably keep us either equal chances of having more or less rain, or maybe slightly below normal for precipitation. And looking at the drought monitor on the right there, that's the projection. That's the projection as we go into the fall. And you can see that although we're still going to stay in drought, that little weird highlighted area there, what that means is that the rainfall that we're expected to get for the next 3 weeks should help alleviate some of the drought conditions, but they won't go away completely. And next slide, please. Okay, so then if you look at kind of in summary, this is actually just the temperature outlook for basically as we get into the next few months, and it actually shows us with those above normal temperatures, which has kind of been what's happening with that high pressure over the Four Corners region. So like I said, we'll continue, in summary, we'll continue to see that monsoonal moisture stay in place at least for the next 3 weeks, and that should help alleviate some of the drought conditions. We will stay above normal for temperatures, and like I said, we do get into a slight pattern shift as we head into late August into September, and that should bring us some drier weather, which is kind of typical for this time of year. And the one unknown that we never know any monsoon season is what the tropics are going to look like. The tropics can be very active, and sometimes if you'll have hurricanes in the Gulf or in the Pacific, they can actually enhance the moisture over New Mexico and the whole desert Southwest. So that's the one unknown we don't have, but right now, like I said, for rainfall, things are looking pretty good for at least the next few weeks, and then we trend back to a little drier conditions. That's all I have.